All right, let's talk about the world we live in. I mean, right now. We're going to dive into a geological era that's responsible for literally everything about our lives. It's an age of wild climate swings, absolutely massive beasts, and, well, us. It's called the Quaternary period, and guess what? You're smack dab in the middle of it.
No, really, take a look outside. Everything you see, the changing seasons, the shape of the land, the very soil that our cities are built on, every single bit of it is a direct result of this amazing and frankly overlooked era.
You know, when you think of geological periods, your mind probably jumps to the Jurassic, right? Dinosaurs and all that. But the Quaternary, it doesn't have the same pizzazz. But here's the thing, it's way more important to us. Why? Simple. It's our home. It's the stage where the entire human story, from start to finish, has played out. So let's get into what this era that literally defines us is all about.
Okay, so let's get down to it. What exactly is this period that shaped everything we know and see today? Let's break it down.
So let's mark the calendar. The Quaternary period kicked off about 2.58 million years ago. And here's the wild part. It never stopped. It's still going on, right now, as you're listening to this. We're living in it.
Now, 2.58 million years sounds like a long time, but in the grand scheme of things, it's nothing. I love this analogy. If you squeezed Earth's entire 4.6 billion year history into a single year, our whole Quaternary period would be just the last few seconds before the ball drops on New Year's Eve. But man, what an insane few seconds it's been. We're talking violent temperature swings and changes that completely reshape the planet.
Okay, so check this out. This timeline basically gives us our geological address. It's like this. We live on Holocene Epoch Street. That's right now. Our neighborhood, or city, is the Quaternary period. And that's all happening inside the much larger Cenozoic era, which is kind of like our country. But look at how much of our Quaternary neighborhood is taken up by the Pleistocene. That's the big one, the long, dramatic era that most of us just call the Ice Age.
So if you remember just two things about the Quaternary, make it these. It's defined by two huge, interconnected dramas playing out at the same time. First, the whole planet got cold, leading to these massive glaciers that would grow and then shrink back. And second, this crazy, constantly changing world, well, it became the perfect, if harsh, cradle for humanity. It forced us to get smart, to adapt, and ultimately to become who we are today.
All right, let's zoom in on that first big drama, the climate. Calling the Pleistocene cold doesn't even begin to cover it. It was a total climate roller coaster, this relentless cycle of chaos that just kept reshaping the entire globe over and over again.
And get this might blow your mind a little. Technically, we're still in an ice age. Yeah, for real. See, the geological definition is pretty simple. As long as there are large-scale ice sheets on land, you're in an ice age. And last I checked, Antarctica and Greenland are still pretty icy. So this nice warm world we're enjoying, it's just a temporary break, an interglacial period in a much, much longer deep freeze.
So the whole Pleistocene was this constant back and forth between two extremes. You had the glacial periods, the deep freezes, where ice sheets literally kilometers thick just crawled across the continents. Then you had the warmer interglacial periods, like the one we're in now, where the ice would pull back. This cycle was like a planetary heartbeat, pulsing between ice and warmth dozens and dozens of times. And for everything living on Earth, the rule was simple: adapt or die.
And if you want to understand the sheer scale of this change, just look at that number. At the peak of the last glacial period, so much of the world's water was frozen solid in glaciers that the global sea level dropped by 120 meters. That's like a 40-story building. Think about it. Huge bodies of water we know today, like Tokyo Bay or the Seto Inland Sea in Japan, they just weren't there. They were dry land.
So what happens when the oceans shrink? New land appears. And not just any land. We're talking about massive land bridges connecting continents that are separated by seas today. The most famous one, of course, is the Bering Land Bridge. It was a huge stretch of land connecting Asia and North America, and it became a literal highway for migrating mammoths, bison, and eventually the first humans to set foot in the Americas. The world map was a totally different beast back then.
And what a world that was. You might think this icy, harsh landscape would be empty, but no, it was home to some of the most incredible, most spectacular creatures to ever walk this planet.
The technical term for them is megafauna. It literally just means big animals, but that's a huge understatement. We're not talking about, slightly bigger deer. We're talking about true giants, mammals that weighed several tons and absolutely dominated every single continent.
So let's meet some of the all-stars, shall we?
First up, the poster child of the Ice Age, the woolly mammoth. And let's be clear, these were not just shaggy elephants. These were 6-ton behemoths with those incredible curved tusks they used like snowplows to sweep away snow and get to the grass underneath. They were perfectly engineered for life on the cold, windswept steppes of the north.
And on the predator's side of things, you've got the Smilodon, the saber-toothed cat. Those 20-centimeter canines? I mean, come on. They weren't for chewing. Oh no. They were precision daggers, designed for one thing, delivering a single, catastrophic killing blow to giant prey, like bison or even a baby mammoth. Absolutely terrifying.
But the diversity was just mind-boggling. Head down to South America, and you might run into a glyptodon. Picture this, a giant cousin of the armadillo, but the size of a small car, like a Volkswagen Beetle, and it was covered from head to tail in this thick, impenetrable shell of bony armor. It was literally a living tank.
And this wasn't just happening in one or two places, it was a global phenomenon. Even places like Japan had their own giants. Take the Nauman elephant. What's so cool is that we've actually found fossils of these elephants right next to stone tools, which is solid proof that our early ancestors living on those islands were going head-to-head with these massive beasts.
So you have these incredible, magnificent creatures ruling the planet for over 2 million years. And then, poof. In what amounts to a geological blink of an eye, right at the end of the Pleistocene, most of them are just gone. Forever. And that, my friends, brings us to the biggest mystery of the Ice Age.
The question is simple, but the answer isn't. Why? Why did the mammoths, the saber-toothed cats, the glyptodons, all of them, why did they all die out while so many smaller animals made it through? What on earth happened to all the giants?
In this prehistoric cold case, there are really two prime suspects. Suspect number one, climate change. The world warmed up, and it warmed up fast. Maybe the habitats these giants needed to survive just disappeared from under their feet. Then you have suspect number two, us, humans. As our ancestors spread across the globe, armed with intelligence and deadly tools, did we just hunt them into oblivion? And look, this isn't just some old academic debate. It forces us to ask a really deep question about ourselves. Are we just another part of nature, or are we something else entirely, a force working against?
So what was the real killer? The rapidly changing climate, or our own clever ancestors? The truth? Well, it's probably a messy combination of both. It's a story that has huge implications for how we think about our impact on the planet right now. All the clues are buried deep in ice cores, in fossils, in ancient DNA. And, figuring out this ancient mystery, it might just hold the key to our own future. The full, detailed story, a complete 80,000-character deep dive is waiting for you. This has just been a taste. Thanks for joining me.
All right, welcome. Today, we're doing something a little different. We're going to test your knowledge with what we're calling the Great Quaternary Quiz. This is a real challenge, spanning the last, almost 2.6 million years of Earth's history. We're talking ice, giants, and the very dawn of humanity. So, here's the deal. 10 questions. Your goal, a perfect 10 out of 10 score. Do you really know the geological period that literally shaped the world we live in today? Well, let's find out, shall we?
Okay, question number one. Let's start right at the beginning. When did the Quaternary period actually begin? And what's so weird, so unique about its end date? I'll give you a second to think about that one.
And the answer is, it began 2.58 million years ago. But here's the crazy part, the unique thing about it. It hasn't ended. We're living in the Quaternary right now. To give you some perspective, think about this. If Earth's entire 4.6 billion year history was compressed into a single day, this whole period would be like the last few seconds before midnight. That is an unbelievable amount of change in what's basically a geological blink of an eye. All right, moving on to question two. Every geological era has its own defining features, right? For the Quaternary, there are just two monumental forces that make it totally different from anything that came before it. Can you name them?
Okay, did you get it? The two pillars are the relentless expansion of glaciers and, of course, the rise of humanity. And these two things are deeply, deeply connected. You see, this wasn't just a simple cold spell. We're talking about violent, repeating cycles of freezing and thawing across the entire globe. And it was exactly this harsh, constantly changing world that acted as a kind of cradle for our ancestors. It forced them to adapt, to innovate, and, to evolve into who we are today.
Question number three, and this one might trip you up. It's based on a common misconception. We all think of the Ice Age as this thing from the distant past, with mammoths and all that, and it's long gone. But according to the geological definition,
Are we still in an ice age right now?
And believe it or not, the answer is yes, we are. See, geologically speaking, an ice age is defined simply by having large-scale ice sheets on the ground. And since we've still got massive ice sheets covering Antarctica and Greenland, well, technically, we're still in one. This nice warm period we're all enjoying, it's really just a temporary thaw, what scientists call an interglacial period. Kind of changes how you think about it, right?
Okay, question 4. Let's talk about a major turning point in the planet's history. You can think of Earth's climate as having a kind of rhythm, a pulse, right? But smack dab in the middle of the Pleistocene epoch, that rhythm, it just changed. Completely. So how did the pattern of ice ages actually shift?
This was a huge deal, known as the mid-Pleistocene transition. The planet's climate rhythm went from a fairly predictable 40,000-year cycle to a much, much longer and more severe 100,000-year cycle. And what that means is that the deep freezes, the glacial periods, became way longer and even more intense. A total game changer for life on Earth.
All right, we're at the halfway point. Now think about this. All that ice, I mean continent-sized glaciers, that water had to come from somewhere, right? And it came from the oceans. So my question for you is, at the absolute coldest point of the era, the last glacial maximum, by how much did the global sea level actually drop? Any guesses?
The answer is an absolutely staggering 120 meters. That's almost 400 feet. I mean, that is just incredible. This drop was so extreme that it literally redrew the map of the world. It exposed huge chunks of the continental shelves, creating these massive land bridges. The most famous one, of course, was Beringia, which connected Asia to North America, and basically became a highway for animals and, yes, the first humans to walk into the Americas.
Question 6 is about something much more recent. A bit of geological history in the making. Just back in 2020, a specific sliver of the Quaternary period was officially named after a location in Japan. This was a huge first for the country. Do you know what it's called?
And just to be clear, this wasn't just about picking a name off a map. This was a major recognition of a site that is globally important. I mean, this place holds a perfect, pristine record of a really pivotal moment in our planet's history.
And that name is the Chibonian. It's named for the Chiba section, a geological site that has the world's absolute best record of the last time Earth's magnetic poles did a complete flip-flop. You know, when north became south and south became north. It's a truly world-class geological treasure.
Okay, let's talk about the giants. The Quaternary was the age of megafauna, right? We're talking woolly mammoths, giant sloths, massive woolly rhinos, the whole shebang. So, why? Why did so many animals get so ridiculously huge during this cold period? There's actually a scientific principle that explains this. Any idea what it's called?
It's called Bergmann's rule, and the idea is actually pretty simple. For warm-blooded animals, a bigger body is just more efficient in a cold climate. Think about it. A larger animal has a smaller surface area compared to its overall weight, and that means it loses body heat way more slowly. It's a simple law of physics, but it was a massive advantage that made being a giant a real key to survival back then.
All right, speaking of giants, let's get specific. Time to test your knowledge on two of the most iconic Ice Age animals. A lot of people just lump the woolly mammoth and the mastodon together, but they are actually very different. So, what were the key differences in their diet and their habitat? So here's the breakdown. It really shows how two animals that looked kind of similar could live in completely different worlds. The mammoth was a grazer. It lived out on the vast open grasslands, what we call the mammoth steppe, and its teeth were like grinding mills, perfect for tough grasses. The mastodon, though, was a browser. It lived in forests and woodlands, and its teeth were totally different, designed for crushing up woody branches and leaves.
All right, question 9. We've talked about the plant eaters. Now let's go to the top of the food chain. With all those massive herbivores wandering around, you just knew there had to be an equally incredible predator hunting them. So, for this question, I want you to name the most iconic saber-toothed predator of the Quaternary, and tell me what those terrifying teeth were actually for.
You got it, it's the one and only Smilodon. But here's the really cool part. The thing about those famous saber teeth, they weren't for chewing. They weren't even really for tearing meat apart. No, they were highly specialized killing weapons. They were designed for one purpose, to deliver a single, fast, devastating bite to the prey's throat, severing the major arteries and ending the fight almost instantly. Brutal, but incredibly efficient.
Okay, here it is, the final question. Number 10. Picture this. The great ice sheets are finally melting. The world is warming up, and then BAM! Suddenly the planet does a complete U-turn and plunges right back into a deep freeze. This dramatic sudden event has a specific name. What is it?
It was called the Younger Dryas Event, and it was just a shocking final act to the Pleistocene. The leading theory is that a massive glacial lake up in North America, Lake Agassiz, basically burst its banks. An unbelievable flood of freezing fresh water poured into the North Atlantic, and it was so much that it shut down the warm ocean currents. The result? The Northern Hemisphere was thrown back into full-on Ice Age conditions for about another 1,000 years. What a finale.
So, how'd you do? Did you get a perfect 10? Even if you didn't, I hope you learned something cool, because the main takeaway here is just how important this period is. The Quaternarian isn't some dusty, ancient history. The very ground we walk on, the climate we depend on, our own existence, it's all a direct result of this incredibly dramatic era.
But listen, our journey through the Quaternary is definitely not over. We've really only scratched the surface today. There's one of the period's biggest mysteries we didn't even get to. What really happened to all the megafauna? What killed them off? If you want to dive into that, you've got to check out the full article. So the final question is, are you ready to continue the journey?